Hey there and welcome. My name is Tina. In today's video, we are going to connect with the very competent, confident, and motherly energy of Barbara Walters, who had just crossed over not that long ago. We're going to see who Barbara Walters really was by revealing to you her soul contract in detail. We will then find out what her life purpose was, what her biggest struggles were, and what she regretted most during her life here. She will also give us some advice to help us understand how she was able to thrive and overcome in an environment that was not set up for a woman to achieve in. My disclaimer about these videos is that they are not meant to put the famous on a pedestal or to condemn them in any way. This is an opportunity to look at them as spiritual beings having a human experience, just like the rest of us are. Showcasing their soul contracts gives us the opportunity for them to help mentor us from the other side. If you would like to know more about the history of the soul contract and how I put the charts together, please watch my short introductory video I will put in the description box below. We will begin by pulling up Barbara's soul contract diagram where we can start to dive in immediately. So let me share my screen, please. And here is the soul contract of Barbara Jill Walters. And as you know, it's always based on the birth name. And again, we have the two interlocking triangles I talk about. Let me annotate my mouse, highlight it here so I can kind of direct where we are going here. So first I want to tell you what if you know who Barbara Walters is, but I'll go into a little bit of detail about her. She was an American broadcast journalist and television personality, a pioneer, though, for women in the industry. She was widely known for her interviewing ability, and she was very, very popular with viewers. She was well known. Some of her well-known interviews were with people, very controversial subjects such as Fidel Castro, Anwar Sadat, Mr. Vladimir Putin, and the Shah of Iran. She was also very good at getting the most popular and famous celebrities to sit down with her, such as Michael Jackson, Oprah Winfrey, Lady Gaga, and Courtney Love were really good ones too that she did. And it wasn't, these interviews didn't happen because she was an easy interviewer. There were quite a few people who thought she was very invasive, intrusive, and not very compassionate. However, the reason that she was so popular was because most of the time she asked the questions that we were all thinking and what we really wanted to know. So my first exposure with her personally was quite vivid. I remember it very well. I was around the age of 13, an impressionable young lady. I watched her interview with the Shah of Iran, and she asked him in this interview if he thought women and men were equal. Well, it was very apparent by his body language and what he was saying and not saying that he didn't think so. He said, of course, there are exceptions, but women were not the same as men, on the same level as men generally. I was a little upset. It was very triggering for me about this interview because I was starting to see how women were viewed in the world, and it didn't feel right. And I want to say that being an empath, I could feel just how uncomfortable his wife was feeling. She was sitting right next to him, and Barbara did a really good job, I thought, in this interview. She did push on a lot of this stuff, and it was very good. And I was glad, even though I felt sorry for his wife, the Shah's wife, I was grateful that a woman, a very, very smart woman, was interviewing him, and she was very tenacious as well. And somehow that gave me a little bit of satisfaction. So I really appreciated that about Barbara. So Barbara was born in Boston, Massachusetts, right on the Virgo Libra cusp. Both of these are in her chart. The 12 down here is the Libra energy, and the 10 over here under her common name is the Virgo energy. The Libra energy is all about balance and justice. The Virgo energy gravitates towards hard work and perfectionism. And I think we can see all of those in her as a person. She was the youngest of three in the children. She had an older brother who died at 14 months old of pneumonia, and an older sister who was born with mental disabilities. So on the right, you can see again, that I have the numbers here as well. You can see this is the birth chart over here, and I like to refer to it as your cake. This is really where your reality emanates from, in this physical side of the chart, which points to the earth, and the spiritual side, which points to the heaven. Over here, we have also, I have those numbers here labeled next to their aspects. And then in our common name, which we use most frequently, it will bring in another set of vibrations. And these vibrations are kind of like the icing on the cake. You don't have the same level as you do in the birth name. But these numbers can help you. They can hinder you because, again, the numbers have positive and negative vibrations. And so it doesn't matter what aspect that is in. Okay. So those numbers will bring in more vibrations that she can draw, either positive or negative, as all the numbers, as I was saying, can slide back and forth on the scale of consciousness. And then that happens according to where you are at what level you are at on the consciousness scale at this time as to what you're pulling in back and forth. So looking at Barbara's chart here, we will go as I always do. Sorry, I didn't mean to move that down to the physical side of the chart, that downward facing triangle, physical challenges, qualities, and drives. And that's where we start manifesting our reality initially. And then as we start to grow from our lessons, if we start to grow from them, we work more deeply into our spiritual side of the chart here. And that's keeping in mind, remember, as I said before, that all these numbers can manifest both negative and positive, no matter what the aspect they sit in. Then we choose certain qualities to overcome those challenges so we can meet what basically drives us. I consider these drives our goals, or what gets us out of bed in the morning, right? So we want to start off by saying that Barbara had a 4, the number 4. We call this a double number because it was the only number that she wanted to experience in this particular aspect. This meant that she would be, so the 4s are all tied to, she would be challenged around the concepts of trust, abundance, and sharing. So it was about experiencing a lot of abundance or a lack of abundance, depending on your thought process and where your self-worth is at. It can relate in any area of your life: money, health, love, children. This would challenge her in several ways as a young woman, especially. The first would be in her self-confidence. She was able to work through this number quite a bit with the help of her father. And again, our parents play a pivotal role in our journey here. So he owned a nightclub, her father, and was in show business. He was able to take her to rehearsals at the nightclub shows where he directed and produced there. She was surrounded by celebrities when she was young, and that she felt, and as I watched a lot of her interviews, really kept her from seeing them as celebrities or being in awe of them. She would see them more as real people on her level. So she would be hit with more challenges with that confidence and her self-worth when she started to appear in front of the camera, when she was in her 30s. But because she continued to focus on her own self-expression and her own individuality, the positive traits, those are positive traits of the 4, she became more popular and then was able to manifest more airtime. She would be challenged here, though, with being able to manifest children. She had 3 miscarriages, and then she ended up adopting her only daughter, Jacqueline, which she named after her older sister. We take on a lot of beliefs, and these can come from parents or authority figures or the media. And for her, at that time, it was a belief that you couldn't have a career and family. And so she had kind of taken on that belief that that would be a big struggle and it would be too difficult to have those. So she had issues manifesting this because, again, that triggers the 4s, which have trust issues. And she didn't trust that she would be able to handle it all and do good at it too. That Virgo perfectionism, she just really struggled thinking that was something that she would be able to do. The 4s, this number can create some selfishness as well because it's all about the self and sharing, learning how to share, because again, it is in her challenge aspect. Now, I know she was really working through this number because when I watched an interview with her, she had said one of her biggest regrets was that she didn't have a bigger family. And that probably meant even if she couldn't have tried for more children, adopting more, because she wanted to share everything she had attained. And she was starting to feel that maybe she had missed out a little bit on that opportunity. You can also see where this number challenged her later in life because she had developed a valve issue with her heart at the age of 80. But again, it's meant to challenge you throughout your life. And so this was very troublesome for her. She ended up having 4 second opinions. You want to talk about trust before she underwent that open heart surgery to fix the valve. Now, open heart surgery can also be tied in her common name. You'll see these 7s down here in her life purpose, and 7s are tied to the heart. So that's not surprising. These numbers do, as you start to work into your spiritual side, they start to move back and forth the later you get in life. So this particular challenge was about her digging deep and really trusting that her health would come back, and it did. She lived another 13 years, right? She was 80 at that time. That adds up to the number 4, again, about trust, until the age of 93. And the 9 and the 3, again, I want to point out, adds up to 12, which is in her physical qualities. So this trust issue from the 4 would also come up in her intimate relationships, as she was married 4 times, 4 here to 3 men. But she said, as she came through to me, that she was always more in love and passionate about her career than any intimate relationship she had. Again, that, woman needs to have a man kind of social convention. It wasn't that she didn't want love, but again, living by the trying to fit into society, right? And not just being so career driven. When we look at the 5 over here in her common name, this energy brought in the courage for her to take the appropriate steps on her path forward. This is all about Aries energy and about action. And so this would help her to push her, taking risks. They would want to hold back and isolate themselves. And so she did get quite a bit of that positive vibes helping her. It's all about truth, expressing yourself. And so that would help her. It's also tied to pioneer energies. So this is all about you taking those risks where no one else had been before. And so that helped again with those trusting that she would be okay if she took those risks. The 5s are very helpful. Now the 4s can also cause some isolation energies. And so she did end up experiencing that later in life, because remember, as I was saying, your challenges always come up through your life. And then whatever you've learned through all of your life, usually you're able to later in life work through those challenges much easier. The wonderful thing that Barbara gave herself was choosing the blended number 12-3 here for her qualities. or talents. I like to refer to them too. This is a very expansive number. We see it in a lot of, Michael Jackson, big people who really had great expansion. And again, the 12 is tied to the Libra energy, which is very idealistic and good at bringing people together. It also gave her a thirst for knowledge, to always be searching and expanding herself, growing as a person. And this helped her to open up that challenged four. And again, seeing things in a more positive way would help her maximize the flow of abundance, giving her a way to find the trust and the confidence, again, that she needed from her challenges. This also gave her the ability to share great love with others. This especially applied to her challenged older sister, who she loved very much. This also helped her open up to not be so selfish and to give of herself. She said that later in life, she regretted at times being embarrassed by her sister, especially since she began to realize as she got older that she was just pure love and joy. She couldn't see the negativity. And Barbara did see that as she got older. And I think that's really great when you start to see people work through their charts. My goal in this channel is I'm going to start bringing in some more questionable people that were pulling in a lot of negativity, serial killers, things like that. I think I'm going to pull in a few of those so we can really understand when somebody is not growing in their chart and what's happening there. But for her, you could see her as she's working through this chart. The 12s also helped her see the best in people, even though they maybe weren't the best people, right? One example here is she assisted in Roy Cohn's disbarment hearing and speaking to his character, as he had previously helped her in her adoption with Jacqueline and her father as well. He helped her, was an attorney for her father. And if you know anything about Roy Cohn, he may be one I'm going to do later. He was not the most exemplary person. He was responsible for causing much suffering to many people. So right or wrong, whatever your feelings are about this number helps you to kind of overlook that. She also could do that with some of the controversial figures she was interviewing, like dictators, people who were known to be very horrendous to their people and their governments and things like that. So being able to look beyond their deepest and darkest flaws, and staying objective in the space. This also comes from the 7, which is being very objective. They make great counselors and judges because they can see both sides, the good and the bad of somebody, and stay in an objective state. 12s can be tied a little bit to judgment, but keeping that objectiveness about it. So going back to when she interviewed the Shah, and I didn't know this as well, she talked about that later and commented about how the Shah had many faults that we could obviously see, but that he also had done a lot to help women in his country. He was one of the first who was raising that bar at that time. So seeing both sides of the situation, seeing people's good and bad qualities. So the 12 assisted her in getting her interviews and making others want to be interviewed by her, because 12 is tied to love, and they could feel this unconditional, non-judgmental love from her, even though she would ask them very tough questions. Even though this number would carry a lot of positive qualities, at times she could be very judgmental of others. She wanted me to bring up the interview with Monica Lewinsky. She had wished she had been more compassionate to a young woman who had been so taken advantage of and so publicly shamed, and very wrongly so. And she didn't, see it that way. As she got older, she did realize that, though. That's part of our growth and understanding and becoming more wise and compassionate. So she had to be careful about not being overly judgmental, because this would throw her out of balance. And then again, that would play out in how she would manifest interviews, because if she wasn't being fair, people weren't going to interview with her. So again, that Libra energy, it was very important for her to be fair and not allow her to be tripped up by that. The 12 is also about balance, balancing the physical and spiritual, and trying to merge those two together. This number can also be about the actual act of love. And you have to be careful with this number, and especially with multiple partners. And yes, even Barbara admitted to having at least one affair with a married man, a married senator, I believe. When she came through and I saw her, she actually winked at me about this one. And I just kind of had to laugh because, again, we all make mistakes in the moment. And she was, I believe, a person of very high integrity, but it doesn't mean that she didn't make mistakes and not do the right thing. So now the 3 in this beautifully blended energy for Barbara was all about learning to communicate, because 3s are all tied to communication and to the ears and listening. So what she really wants you to know that is, being a good interviewer or just being a good friend or being a good person is really listening to someone's perspective. Everyone has value. Everyone is entitled to speak their point of view. And being careful that you are not in your mind as they're speaking. You know how sometimes when someone's speaking, you're already forming your sentences or know what you're going to say in return. It's really, really just listening and not trying to manage it in your mind. So not comparing it to your own ideas and then trying to talk over people. And so she learned this took work for her, because 3s can be very impulsive and they can kind of have knee-jerk reactions. And this is something that she had to develop over time. She always prepared her questions ahead of time, but she says you really have to listen, because the next question may not be just one you prepared. It has to flow naturally. So taking what someone said and then asking them to go a bit deeper. 3s are also Mars energy and are full of passion and action. So when she wanted to, she could take the necessary action to bring her ideas to fruition. 3s can be a little bit tied to self-worth too, and they're about making lots of money. So again, she was very focused on her career. Making money was very important because she was craving stability, and this number is all about balance and learning how to manifest what you want. The 21-3 here in her common name, right along this aspect line, gave her some great, it's got these 3 elements here within it, and it's all about durability, strength, and endurance. Helped her to thrive on large scale challenges, which she did repeatedly and did well. But this number can bring with it some hardship as well. And that's to build great inner strength. Barbara's dad lost some fortunes back and forth, which made her strive to become very inventive, very independent, and very stable. That was there to help her because she really wanted to be sure that someone in her family could take care of her older sister. That was a concern of hers. And again, that comes back to that deep love she had and eventually wanting to share her abundance with her sister. This number 21 brings in that energy of the Divine Mother. And this gave her that kind of a naturalness to her interviewing skills, like you were sitting down and talking to your mom, kind of an aura about that. She had a great ability to get people to open up. The 5s are also a little bit about people pleasing, and they learn. People with 5s learn at a young age. They can really read people. They're very psychic. And they can be very empathic, so they can sense people and where to go and where not to go. And so again, with this mothering energy, that really gave her an edge over a lot of the masculines that she was competing with at that time for interviews. And that's why she got a lot of interviews. And the men around her were astounded by that. They didn't understand it. But if you want to learn more about this 21-3 number, the Leonard Nimoy video I did would be a great one to watch. He had a lot of that number, Spock. It's really a fun video. Learned a lot from that video. So now we get to Barbara's drives, what was getting her out of bed in the morning. And when you have a 6, which is also one of her dominant vibrations, these dominant vibrations of 5s and 6 would play out pretty heavily for her. When you have 6 in your physical drives, or what I call goals, it really isn't 100% free will. So this would give her an additional push from her soul into the area that she was supposed to go. So this was a chosen field to me. This was meant to be for her to be this pioneer and to open things up for women and to help start to balance out that masculine and feminine energy. It was meant for her to become very creative. This is the Taurus energy, which is the bull, but so it gave her like this practical and more strong-willed energy. It helped her again with focus, because you have to be able to focus in order to manifest. It's important that you have that ability to bring it down to the physical plane. The negative side of this number can be addictions. I've talked about that many times in a lot of the videos that I do, especially with celebrities that struggle with addiction. 6s can also be having too many projects going on. Barbara had admitted several times that she had to remember to stop and enjoy what she was doing rather than just doing, and having so much going on. That can also be tied to that balance of the 12, where 12s can be tied to feeling like they don't have enough time. So they're just trying to pack in as much as they can in this lifetime. 6s are all about risk taking, where the challenged 4s struggle with that. So the more risks she took, the bigger the interview she tried for, the more she was able to manifest and make happen. It's pretty exceptional that a woman journalist during Barbara Walters' time in the 70s would be able to land the type of interview she was landing. It really speaks to the power of that 12-3, because that's an expansive energy and it's a powerful energy, allowing her to just keep expanding and creating. And the 6, which is about taking those ideas, those thoughts, and manifesting them into reality. So what made her so successful? Because this is all about success in business as well. You know, achieving a lot here, 6s can be as well. And what made her very successful, she wanted me to convey to you guys, was her ability, being able to focus, her ability to not let anyone or anything convince her that she couldn't have what she wanted, not to let them get into her head, especially as far as her career was concerned. She was told often enough that being a woman, she wouldn't be taken seriously. She came to say that, who is anyone to tell anyone what they can do or can't do? You know, Barbara said she was most often able to see beyond that, that they were just worried about themselves. That had nothing to do with her. And so it's about separating yourself from others in that way. So you, just because somebody tells you something doesn't make it true, or you don't have to believe it or take that on. She just continued to focusing on where she wanted to go. And that's a really important thing for people moving forward. Just, she really wants to make that clear. But it's not like an overnight success type thing. When you have 12s and 6s, this is about expanding properly, and the 6s are about expanding slowly and growing with those expansions. So she started out doing publicity and writing press releases in her 20s. Then she grew to producing some small, short children's programs and writing for Red Book magazine for a few more years after that. It was when she started as a writer and researcher. When she was the age of 32, I call this a pivotal time. Those are those 5s, pioneer energies. When she moved up to handling some small assignments and the weather, she did the weather as well. I thought that was interesting. Within a year, she had become what they called a reporter at large, developing, writing, and editing her own reports and interviews. She had several that were very well received, both on different spectrums: A Day in the Life of a Nun and A Day in the Life of a Playboy Bunny. Now that's 2 very different perspectives. When she turned 42, which again adds up to 6, that's when she hosted her own local NBC affiliated show, Not for Women Only, which ran in the morning on the Today Show. The 10-1 here on this level, and her common name, is all about service. The more you serve, the more you will be served type of energy. It's the Virgo energy, but I was talking about this perfectionism that would push her really hard. This is also about learning to balance as well as the 12s are, learning to find balance in your life, that balance between the masculine and feminine. You have to be careful not to allow yourself to be disempowered from the masculine, but she was being challenged with that. When she was on the Today Show, the male host was given 3 questions before she could ask one. And that was part of their agreement that she had to abide by. So this is about her not allowing that to disempower her, take that creative side and start thinking outside of the box. And she worked through this by focusing on getting her own interviews and not allowing this to crush her. This was very difficult for her, but it helped her to focus on the creativity and doing what she loved most, getting her own interviews. This was the most important part she wanted to bring up, was focusing on what you can control, not what you can't. I know I often personally get caught up sometimes at work with what I can't control and get very negative about that because it requires constant work and attention to your thoughts to stay out of that disempowering victim mentality that we all get there. That is, nobody is perfect, and she struggled at times, but she was really strong. She had a lot of good numbers here, and she really worked through them. And so she was able to start to really activate the spiritual side of her chart, which I believe came right around 32, which adds up to 5 when she was hired on the Today Show, as I'd mentioned earlier. And she activated the dominant 5s, having 4 or more of the same number makes it a dominant number. And that makes it a pretty strong energy. So you're going to get a lot of the vibrations that come with those numbers, whether positive or negative. And so the 5s are all about truth for her. And it's about speaking your truth. Getting to the truth would be very important to her, even if it got her into trouble. And again, as I said, this is about the pioneer energies, her being the first to blaze the trail to become the first female co-host journalist of a U.S. news program. She signed a $5 million contract, right? 5s, with ABC, establishing her as the highest paid news anchor, either male or female. And this was 1976. And if you add up those numbers, 1976, that adds up to 5. That was a pioneer year meant for people to achieve. I'm sure there were many others besides Barbara, male and female, who made a lot of pioneer accomplishments, right, in that year. That may, again, I think she was around the ages of 46, 47. Then came 2020. That adds up to 4, right? The 4s are tied to seeing the future, being able to see what's coming. And that's very interesting. But again, 2020 vision, seeing what's coming, kind of made sense to me. Hang on, I need a little drink. My throat is getting dry. And then that's when she started to do her famous scoop interviews, and that made her super, super popular. And it propelled her to the top of her industry. So 5s are also were about writing. They're tied to writing. You know, you're meant to write if you have 5s, whether you're journaling or blogging or writing a book. And she did write a book, which she titled How to Talk with Practically Anybody About Practically Anything. She was 41 when she wrote that book, which adds up to 5, and it sold hundreds of thousands of copies worldwide and has been translated into 6 different languages. And that's that creative 6 number. I think that just really sums up this chart, these 5s and dominant 6s for her. Having a 5 in spiritual challenges and drives is where Barbara would struggle, though, with her own spirituality in general, because it's tied to the things we can't see. Her understanding of the intangibles and spirituality would be very hard for her at first. You know, these 5s here. She's got this kind of triangle here, 5s. And it would be hard for her to understand, but again, she'd be pushed by her 12s to try to push through that and try to learn more about it. And she did do this great piece on 2020 about heaven, where she talked with various religious leaders. And then she did a second piece, a follow-up piece to that, which she called What is Heaven, in which she broadened the scope to encapsulating other notions such as different dimensions. The 5s are all about your multidimensional capabilities. and even bringing in a scene from the movie Ghost. Very fascinating. What she was alluding as she became older was that you must have something outside of yourself to believe in. It can't just be a career. She was starting to move from the physical to the spiritual side with these ideas. Anything that you can love, like a pet or partner, again, about wanting to learn how to share of herself, starting to fall into the spiritual side, which she has a 4 in her spirit on her spiritual side too. And this 22-4 pushed her because it's all about completion, philosophies, learning the whole piece of something. This would push her to seek out those other philosophies by doing those heaven pieces on 2020. And this would also play a part in her not being able to have children because this 22 can be an infertile number challenge that she definitely wanted to take on in this life. And she got around it by, you didn't necessarily have to have children, natural way, you could adopt. So again, thinking outside of the box. This number is also called the ugliness to beauty number. And this would make Barbara want to really dig deep with her own feelings as to what beauty is. Again, it's about what's not just on that superficial outside, but what you're carrying on the inside. I'd like to mention the Marilyn Monroe video that I did captured this number and its effects very well. In case you're interested in exploring it more deeply, that video had quite interesting aspect to that 22-4. The 19-1 in her spiritual qualities is where Barbara gets her sense of humor from. I love that she learned to not take herself so seriously as she got older. Sherry O'Terry did a great impression of her that on Saturday Night Live. It was very funny, and seeing Barbara in the skit made it very special. And that was really good because initially when people were making fun of her, and I think of Gilda Radner, there was some Weekend Update scenes early. She was struggling with taking herself a little too seriously because she was treated pretty badly. And they were kind of showcasing that on Saturday Night Live. If you ever go back to some of those skits, you do see she wasn't too happy about those ones, but she really learned to start not taking herself so seriously and being able to laugh at herself as well. And that again is part of your growth process. This number is also about creating safe space for others to be able to share. So again, you can see where this helped her as she got older and was able to do better and better interviews. It also would help her to become more compassionate. And as she got older, later in life, she said she was getting to be way too soft to be an interviewer anymore because she had just really come into that compassionate side, and that's meant to be, that's how our life is meant to go. So on the negative side of the 19, this is where Barbara would beat herself up a lot. It can be a lot of self-judgment. So you have to be careful of that because, again, it's okay to reflect on what we do, wanting to make it better, but not putting ourselves down in the process. You have to be very careful about that and your self-esteem and your self-worth because this is, again, all about improvement. None of us are perfect. And we, again, she had that perfectionism from the 10. And this is the other one to which these ones are tied to the masculine. So she had to be very careful about being too much in her masculine and allowing those energies to balance a little better. I remember her talking to Oprah about her regrets, and she said she had regrets about every interview she ever did. So even though she could be hard on others, she was really hard on herself. And see, that's reflected in that 19-1. So the 14-5 that is here in this aspect for her is really a mirror energy. It's about us being able to see yourself in others in order to raise your own consciousness. So often when someone triggers us, it can actually be about something that we are doing. I mean, how many politicians right now, when I think of it, I've seen lately complaining about the things that others are doing to them when they are doing those same things very openly to others. So it's so confusing, but that is happening because what triggers you is meant for you to try to figure out why you're being triggered, and then to see if you can figure out maybe it's triggering you because maybe you're doing the same thing. That's called doing your shadow work, people. And we all need to do it. Barbara's saying that's a great time to look at it because it's everywhere right now. It's all meant to drive our consciousness to a higher level. And, the energy of the planet is ascending and we're going to need to catch up. So remember, everything is here to help you. I'm giving a shout out to Matt Kahn, one of my spiritual mentors who wrote the book, Everything is Here to Help You. I encourage you to check it out. Once we can stop looking at everything from a victim perspective and look at it from what is this meant to teach me, you can start to detach yourself from the situations that trigger you. And this allows you to transmute it and eventually it won't bother you. You will see it for what it is. And trust me, I do the same thing. I get triggered. Then I've got to be like, okay, I got to start really looking at my shadow side. Am I being manipulative? Am I not being fair to somebody? You have to start looking at what is motivating you to do the things you do, because that's where real peace and real joy can come from, is when you really start to work through those. You can really get to a good place and find those alignment keys that I'm always talking about. So again, the five being in her spiritual drives, that was again about her writing that book, being the pioneer and speaking her truth. And the sevens were about her being that counselor, facilitating groups, not controlling people though. People with sevens have to learn that facilitating is not controlling people. It's allowing the energy to flow, opening up the heart. And so again, the sixes in her life purpose here was all about Barbara being able to learn to focus on her energy, as we talked about, to be super creative and to be able to bring her manifestations into reality, but not just for herself, but in helping others. She became the teacher of teachers. Fives generally are meant to be the teachers of the teachers because they know how to be the pioneers, take it to the next level, and then they're meant to teach to others. She mentored and nurtured many other women, especially from her co-creation of the talk show The View, bringing in different perspectives and learning how to let people voice their truth, whether you agree with them or not, a platform to give a lot of different views, right? Getting it out there so we can all talk about it. And I know it can have a lot of drama, and the 14 fives are about a little bit of drama and intensity to it as well. That's part of her chart. She kind of liked that intensity, but it was more about her leading by example. The older she got, the more she treasured her friends and mentored anyone who's willing to listen. This 16-7 over here on the same aspect as her life purpose, really gave her the ability to connect with people at all levels in a down-to-earth way. And it involves opening up your heart to show them who she really was and being okay with that. That's how we lead by example. She tells me she now wishes she would have done more teaching. The threes are all about doing more teaching. But threes also think that who are they to teach? So it's a self-worth thing that we all struggle with when we have threes. And so she had wished she had done more teaching about journalism, especially right now, because she feels like facts are being more misconstrued and tribal scripts are being written on a regular basis, creating divisiveness and separateness. She talked a lot about the Nixon era, and a lot of this same stuff was going on then. But she wants us to know that's all part of our growth, and we will eventually see it for what it is. And we will manifest something better because we will continue to get better. So I am now going to pull a few oracle cards to see what else Barbara would like to bring forward. So hang on, I'm going to stop sharing the screen. I have some decks over here that she definitely wanted me to go to. And the first one she's asking me to go to is the Sacred Destiny. So we're just going to pull a few cards quickly so the video won't get too long, I hope. Oh, so the first one is a fulfillment. See the peach here and the moon. Being fulfilled, really understanding what fulfillment is. And fulfillment really isn't about the self, doing for the self. Fulfillment comes from community and being part of something bigger than yourself, like was saying, and reaping what you sow, this great, beautiful peach here, this harvest under the moon through all of your, trials and tribulations. So that's a great card to start with. So the next one is going to be from the Elemental Oracle. So what else, Barbara, would you like to say? So Barbara brings forward the number 3, again, which was in her chart and her qualities, beginnings, the East. So this is all about, oh, I love this. This has got a little bit of magic to it. And I love this, almost kind of like this compass, feeling your way through, though, is saying it's really important for you to feel what's right and what isn't. And learning to let go of what no longer serves you so you can always start new beginnings, not hanging on to any old, like she said, she would often sometimes regret something, but being able to start those new beginnings and move forward. I'm going to take another drink here. And again, that's where the magic comes from, is in the East. The sun rises in the East, right? And so we start a new day, vibrant. Yeah, I really like that. And so now she wants me to do the secret language of light. And this comes through, of course, lovely 31, which adds up to the 4. And this is the divine feminine. Isn't that a beautiful card? Remember, I was talking about how I really feel her incarnation was very pivotal in a lot of the pioneers, women pioneers, and she's just one of many because she's famous. It's easy to go to her chart and see how she was just very pivotal. I'm going to read the book on this one. She wants me to. So the divine feminine, and we all have, remember, the divine masculine and the divine feminine. So shine your inner light on your desires. Look beyond the obvious and the superficial into the heart of a matter. Peer deeper into the hidden and explore the mysterious, that curiosity. Remember your vast potential and the unlimited possibilities available to you. It is time to trust your intuition, your inner voice, and your instincts. This may also be a time for stillness, for there are unseen forces at work, orchestrating the whole universe to bring intense and beautiful experiences to your life. Allow yourself to receive all that you want. You are the mother of all you create. Remember the divine mother energy she carried? Nurture yourself. It starts with nurturing yourself and all that flows within and around you. There may be an impending marriage or birth around you, and marriage can be a contract between 2 people. It can be, so it's not just intimate partners. It can be the birth of an idea, not just, physically or symbolically. The divine feminine wants you to know there's always enough to go around. Abundance is everywhere. That's coming from her karmic 4. Remember, 3-1 is tied to the 4. Abundance is everywhere. Embrace joy. Gratitude and joy and trust is what really gives you. And it says you are the mother. So that's just beautiful. I love that. Really ties in with her soul contract. Now I'm going to the Archetype Cards by Caroline Myss. These are, again, and one came jumping right out. I love this. She has a lot of purple energy here, which is very, again, high consciousness energy. And so the guide, right? So the light, the archetype cards give you the positive and negative aspects, which we all have. Remember, I talked a lot about how it's really important for us to look at our shadow side. So being a guide or a mentor or a leader represents the nature of the divine in life and in yourself. The shadow side places financial gain and control over imparting spiritual insight. And so again, you can see where we can all struggle with this. That's not unusual, but I love this purple. And in the picture, there's the owl, which is the wisdom, knowing that there's more going on here than meets the eye. It's not just about, acquiring wealth and who has the most wins type of mentality. It's not just what we are here for. It's all about learning that spiritual side, but also allowing us to manifest the things that we do desire. There is both of that, and that's more about allowing. So the last one I'm going to pull for you before we wrap up, Barbara. Thank you so much. And so I had felt like I wanted to cough a couple times, and I do want to mention, Barbara wants to mention that cough, the emotional side, if you read messages in the body, which I always do to bring up, is cough can be tied to guilt and how important it is for you to really, if you are struggling with any of those lower emotions, you really want to get to the root cause of that so that you can transmute it, because the more you can release a lot of that guilt, the more you can raise your consciousness, because those things can keep you very weighted down. And I love this last card, which is all about peace. And it's number 23, which adds up to her fives, that in her spirituality. It has the dove with the olive branch and the egg, which is birthing, fertility, and birthing new ideas. And this is very beautiful. My nose always itches when I'm really onto something into what they want to say. They tickle my nose when they are trying to get my attention to really push on something. So 23, freedom from attachment, and fives are tied to freedom. Radical acceptance. It doesn't get any better than this. A quiet mind, a heart fulfilled, freedom from want, and the soul's satisfaction. The way to peace is through radical acceptance. Everything in your world is exactly as it should be. Harmony is beautiful. Enjoy it. So that was her final message. So beautiful. Thanks for being here with me. Thank you for being here and watching. Love is the key. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you.